All right, Zay, I'm going to quickly talk about, I think, an impending issue that's going to continue throughout esports. This past week, we covered one story in the CIS scene for all of you guys who follow CSGO. Kind of like the Russian, part of the Russian scene, I should say, but a lot of you guys probably know the CIS region in general embraces quite a bit of the esports scene, but also the Asian scene as well has difficulties when it comes to match fixing. We touched on a story with a CSGO team who has now moved one of their players to the inactive roster, that being a guy known as Ramzik Boss. I know it's a freaking sick name, by the way.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, you wonder where these names come from. Boss is spelled with $2 signs, which is ironic in the fact.
Of course it is.
He's now
Can you spell it any other way?
Right? He's now been accused multiple times of match fixing, and within a few weeks, he's been benched and on the inactive roster. I assume under some investigation, or the team just is. It's confusing. Now, this was all too reminiscent because just from the CSGO scene, I'm sure you guys watching also or listening know more about other match fixing scandals. CSGO is kind of notorious when it comes to match fixing, but I'm sure other esports have similar issues of you have these young, like we talked about the Fortnite stories, you have these young, impressionable kids, oftentimes in these... I don't want to say it in an offensive way. You come up in the Asian scene or the CIS scene, and I would say they're more notorious for these kind of scandals, where you have almost mob-like mentalities approaching these teams and forcing them to do things which they don't want to do. We touched on a story, I think it was now probably a few years back. It was actually Captain Mo, formerly of Tyloo, from the Asian scene, and he talked about on a huge Reddit post about his team being approached by the equivalent of what he called the Chinese mafia, and pretty much saying, hey, like, you're going to throw these games, and evidently they tried to resist as much as possible and did, but they were very fearful for their lives.
Right.
And so as we have younger and younger pros come up in those scenes, as well as, NA, EU, whatever it might be, I think match fixing is going to be a danger.
Yeah, I agree. I think on both sides, both in terms of being threatened by third parties to, especially as we see more gambling become more more of a thing for esports, more of those people are going to see the dollar signs and be like, oh, we can take a little bit of that. Unfortunately, I feel like there's very little that can be done to stop that because by its very nature, esports is very open in a sense. So it would be hard to say, oh, we're going to keep the teams competing a secret so nobody can interfere potentially, or, hey, we're not going to show who the players are so nobody can influence them or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I think, taking drastic measures such as being like, oh, the players are locked up in this compound for a week before an event to keep them away from any outside influence, that's too much too. So, yeah, I don't know what you would even do to prevent that.
Yeah, I think you make a great point with the more money that comes into it. And we've seen this traditional sports as well. There's probably many cases we don't even know about. But even if sports with very open figures have these issues, think about how anonymity works in the esports scene. How many people from behind their computers or from that you'll never know or actually see, especially with all these online events, can pressure teams simply via so many services say, hey, throw this match, do this. We'll touch more in the future. I think we're going to have an upcoming story here as well about an entire event which was supposedly orchestrated just for match fixing. I mean, these guys can do things that we didn't really think that were even feasible at first. You can orchestrate an entire event, just invite a couple of teams, mix a few results here and there, and place your bets across so many websites. There's so many forms of anonymously doing this kind of thing.
Right.
It certainly will be an issue, and I know there will be. We have the most notorious one in history. I would say iBuyPower. They were caught, but for everyone that gets caught, you got to wonder how many are not getting caught.
Probably dozens at this point, realistically speaking.
Yeah. I think it's a weird moment because, again, like you said, more and more money is entering the scene, and that can be good and bad because, at least to a certain extent, a lot of pros will be making more money. Thus, there should be less incentive to want to throw matches and fix.
Right.
But to the other point of things, with more money comes bigger bets and more gambling. And
bigger fish getting involved.
Yep.
And
all of a sudden you see... you see maybe this is obviously way down the line, but you see a Dota 2 International or a CSGO Major or whatever it might be, and all of a sudden you see these big wigs saying, hey, Liquid, hey, Fnatic, like, let me give you a couple million to throw or to maybe lose a game, not even lose the entire thing.
Right.
It's definitely going to be... This is all speculation, but I certainly think it's going to be ongoing, and certainly stories we cover more and more as esports do progress. And I don't know.
Thinking about it, actually, everything you said just brought this to mind. We're seeing such a rise in the growth of AI products being more implemented in like mid-tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
For tracking how players operate, their behavior, and things like that. So, I mean, I would not be surprised if at some point someone just tweaks one of those coaching AI to determine, like, hey, is this person actually trying to throw?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I imagine people, if it's not something that they do often, nobody's going to be able to be like, oh, I'm just going to miss the sniper shot. It's going to be, you got to think about that. It's going to look off to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
So
I think you're right. Way in the future.
Yeah, something like that would certainly de-incentivize people trying to threaten people in the match fixing.
For sure. That would be a great idea, because as of right now, a lot of the time it's just pure speculation. Someone sees, oh, they missed that shot. That's something and then of course everyone goes, they're throwing. But a lot of the times it's not when they're really throwing, right?
Right.
So that'd be cool to have a future program where all of a sudden it's like, the odds of him missing that shot were particularly,
it was odd.
It was low, and he still missed it.
Yeah, who knows if it would work on a single player level, but I imagine if a whole team is throwing, it would probably be kind of clear.
I don't know. We'll see how it progresses.
Hopefully.
It's going to be weird as more and more money enters esports that, again, it comes with a double-edged sword.
Mm.